Even though it appears Mario games are slowly phasing them out, I feel like there are very few games in the history of the world that feel so ingrained with the iconic phrase "game over" as Mario. For many people all across the world, their first time seeing this message was in a Mario game, even if the phrase is much older than that, with its origins being traced back to pinball machines of the 1950s before Space Invaders really cemented it as video game language. However, the association with the Mario series has remained strong ever since, and nothing shows that better than the fact that game overs are not exclusively an out-of-game mechanic. Several moments throughout the series suggest that game overs are actually a thing in-universe as well, but more on that later. First, I want to take a look at how this message has evolved over the course of the series, in terms of both imagery as well as wording. For the first set of 2D games, everything is basically how you would expect. Mario hits something, flies off screen while in pain, and you get a simple game over message. It's simple, but it does the job, which explains why this winning formula wasn't really changed until it was absolutely necessary in Mario 64, seeing as the whole thing was now 3D of course. This introduced another element that would soon become a staple, the appearance of Bowser's emblem, here also accompanied with evil laughter. This game over screen is also easily the most distinct so far, showing the Mario head from the file select screen dazed and confused. The first to add more text to the whole ordeal is Mario Sunshine, which initially starts with a "too bad" message, before then the classic game over text also appears. I never really noticed it while playing, but if you're paying closer attention to it, it's honestly kinda weird how these two pretty identical messages kinda overlap. The slew of handheld remakes and re-releases from the early to mid-2000s don't really do anything shocking to the formula, although it is worth pointing out that Mario 64 DS's game over screen is arguably more similar to the screens usually seen in the 2D games rather than 3D games. No 3D Mario head in sight this time. In hindsight though, this can be seen as the new standard, more so than a regression. Not long after, when New Super Mario Bros. Came out, the entire Mario universe received essentially a redesign, with everything from official art, models, UI design, and much more becoming streamlined for pretty much the entire foreseeable future. And among those things was the game over screen, now essentially a combination of the 2D classic Fade to Black introduced text alongside the Bowser emblem introduced in Mario 64. Every single 2D Mario game would continue to feature this exact style, which sounds more impressive than it really is, since pretty much all of them are New Super Mario Bros. Again. That said, with everything that Super Mario Bros. Wonder changed in terms of presentation and design, this was not one of them. While the style is obviously different, the appearance of the Bowser emblem and the following game over text are retained from New Super Mario Bros. In 3D, things would continue to go a tad different. The two Mario Galaxy games don't have the Bowser emblem, only game over text that then turns into a solid color, and Mario 3D Land and World even bring back Mario Sunshine's double message. First a too bad, then a game over, to really hit the point home. However, it's also at this time that we get the first games that ditch the word game over entirely, for the first time in series history. Super Mario Run starts out with something from the New Super Mario Bros. Games, meaning Bowser's emblem, but there is no real game over text. It just immediately gives you the choice to either retry or leave. And Mario Odyssey has no text whatsoever, it just takes a bit of your coins and you're back into the action. This was and still is a highly praised element of Mario Odyssey. It really helps make the game much more snappy and fast paced, and it makes it so you're not punished for trying the wider range of crazy moves the game allows for. In that light, it's actually kinda surprising Mario Wonder doesn't have something similar, although the idea of resetting progress is functionally removed in this game, retaining the idea that lost coins are instead the punishment. Donkey Kong Bonanza follows this same formula as well. But as is more often the case, the real flavor when it comes to Mario stuff is introduced in the spin-offs. Now, for as wacky as they usually are, the Mario & Luigi series has never had a unique game over screen in any of the games. From Superstar Saga to Brothership, not one dares to deviate from the phrase game over. This is in strong contrast to what that other big Mario RPG series is up to, as Paper Mario has played around with the conventions of going game over frequently. Well, it started simple in N64 with our standard game over screen. Starting in the Thousand Year Door, a new trope would be introduced where you would obtain unique game overs while in the overworld. Now, this wouldn't necessarily result in a special game over screen, but I think it's worth mentioning as it's a pretty cool feature, if you will, that essentially functions more as bad endings rather than actual game overs. Examples from the Thousand Year Door include reading Ghosty's diary or choosing to become the Shadow Queen's servant, stuff like that. And ever since, this has become a Paper Mario staple, appearing in every single game onwards. Even the often criticized Sticker Star and Color Splash titles made sure to keep this rather than the battle style. And speaking of Color Splash, we can be talking about unique game over screens and not mention this game. While the actual game over screen is just text on a white background, the game over animation, if you will, is surprisingly dark when you really think about it. It depicts Mario, already down and out on the floor, getting all the color drained from him by a group of slurp guys. This is essentially the Mario equivalent of getting executed while you have already surrendered, as plenty of games show in their game over screens that when Mario is down on the ground, he is effectively already done for. So what's the problem with these slurp guys having to add insult to injury? Another game, or series rather, that cannot be overlooked when talking about unique game over screens are the Luigi's Mansion titles. The first game for GameCube is one of the few games in the Mario series, and actually the earliest in the entire Mario franchise, to replace the game over text with something else. In this case, good night. You may have also seen the first game screen accompanied by this image of what I suppose is meant to be a depressed Luigi, kicked out of the mansion knowing he will never save his brother. It has become a bit of a notorious image, I feel like, especially in the more creepypasta corners of the internet, but it's actually not in the game at all. It is, however, an official image, as this was a beta game over screen seen at the end of several demos and trailers for the game. But you can go back and check, this image itself never appeared in the final release of Luigi's Mansion, unique as that would have been as far as game over screens go. While the sequel, Dark Moon, uses both the good night and game over phrasing, Luigi's Mansion 3 is another game that has a completely unique game over sequence that is essentially another of the bad ending variety. It depicts Luigi being captured by King Boo and turned into a painting, after which the good night text appears once more. In this way, the game kinda ties its mechanic of you as a player messing up and earning yourself a game over into the story and themes of the game, showing that this isn't just an out-of-game mechanic. If you screw up, Luigi cannot complete his mission and King Boo wins. There is, however, another game which goes into the nitty-gritty of a game over even more so than Luigi's Mansion does. Super Paper Mario features the underwear and the over there as stand-ins for heaven and hell, representing the two places one goes after death, which, according to the game, is what happens when you game over. It's not losing a life in the Mario games that equals death, it's a game over. That's a pretty noteworthy distinction. In this place you can find shades, representing the shades of Greek mythology that are said to be the spirits of humans in the afterlife. And they talk about how their game overs came to be, and even ask Mario how his game, i.e. his life, was. One even uses the after game as in afterlife, which is on one hand super neat, but also a missed opportunity not to use post game, come on now. And I should probably also acknowledge that, according to Super Paper Mario at least, Mario, Luigi and Bowser all belong in the underwear, aka hell, whereas only Peach is the over there, so heaven material. Not sure what Mario and Luigi have done to deserve that, but I suppose all those defeated Goombas and Koopas do tally up. While you can of course question how canon this is, or how canon anything in Mario is, I do think it is such an interesting idea to tackle game overs as an actual in-universe thing. I would love to see it tried again, although, if we're being realistic, the only Mario games that could ever tackle something like this are the two RPG series, and seeing as Paper Mario already tackled it and, well, has enough issues going to interesting places as is, I'm not too optimistic we will see something like what Super Paper Mario did again. Especially not since game overs in general are phasing out. But hey, who knows, maybe one day it will get the nostalgia bonus and become such a long lost feature that a mainline Mario game decides to do something fun with it. Seems weird to ask, but do you have any favorite game over moments? Either in terms of what happened or just a favorite way for it to be portrayed? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing. If you really want to support me, you can now become a channel member to get all kinds of fun perks and help me keep bringing these videos to your doorstep every week. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.